Welcome to Journey to Justice. I'm Eiko Kosasa, your host for today. Recently, I interviewed Meleanna Meyer, a well-known artist, filmmaker, and educator at Kauai Marsh near Kailua town. This beautiful marsh holds meaning for Meyer, who contributes as a community member to its ongoing restoration. As an educator, she visits schools, prisons, and community groups to guide people in finding their voice culturally through the visual arts. I began the interview by asking Meleanna to talk about where she was born and raised.
I'd love to share about my wahi honua, or my wahipana onehanau. The place I was born and raised was right down the street on Mokapu. And I'm one of 7 children of Harry and Emma Meyer. So I come from a large family, and Kailua family. And we were raised with many of our cousins right next door to each other.
Nice.
So there are like about 5 families, my mom's brothers and sister. And so this is like my backyard. I mean, I consider Kauai Nui, which is where we are, like part of my backyard. It's either this Mauka or Makai, which is the ocean. And then we spent time on the ocean in Kailua as well.
Yeah.
So I'm from this ahupua of Kailua, and I'm just happy to be here with you today. Thank you.
You're welcome. Where did you go to school? Do you want to say a little bit about that?
You know what? I think what I would like to say is I was, because we were born and raised in Kailua, we went to a parochial school. St. Anthony's right down the street, so we walked to school until we were older, till I was in 7th grade, and then we went to school in town. And then, let's see, well, but you know, Kailua was always a place I always wanted just to stay. So for me to have to go into town to school was always such a drag, but it was still a good idea. But anyway.
Yeah, as I was mentioning before the interview, if I lived on the windward side, going to town would be just awful.
Yeah,
to do
and it was because we had to get up early in the morning and go to school at 6:30. You know, leave by 6:30. So that was a drag. And but I don't know. I'm just trying to think in terms of school. Not a whole lot to say about school other than I love school, so that made it easy in terms of the things I was interested in doing. But
So how did you come to political consciousness? Was it something starting when you were younger, or?
Actually, that's a really interesting question, Eiko. And for me, political consciousness is something that I think everyone it belongs to everybody. So in our family, I was going back thinking about political consciousness, what that means. I think just being conscious and conscientious in terms of community is a really important thing. So since I was young, my mom was always very much a part of the community, doing for others. So in terms of political consciousness, I can say that didn't happen until probably I was out of college, you know, because when you're in school and you're young, the examples that we had were extraordinary aunts and uncles who were connected to really, to me, important things in community. But I didn't really understand or appreciate their contributions until I got older, like my Auntie Irmgard. She's really an important person to me. And, you know, she wrote songs that were about the environment. Wake Up Hawaii, There's No Other Like You. I mean, so for us, whether it's Emmett, for Kaho'olawe in the 70s when I was finishing high school and college, there was a consciousness that had to do with more caring for the land and caring for our family and community. So in the context of political, I don't think I would phrase it like that, except that everything's political.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So that's a really good question. When is one raised to a political consciousness? When one opens one's eyes, I suppose.
Yeah.
You know. I think
so did something happen that made you connect the different things? You know, like
connect the dots.
Yeah. Or you know.
You know, again, when you're raised in a family that is all about love and support and care, and you have the access and potential to do anything you want, to ask the questions, I think that is such a blessing and a gift. So how that impacts one's political orientation is really interesting, because my folks, my father in particular, is very Republican. So he now deals with a bunch of rabid Democrats. You know, I mean, you can't help it. But
Yeah.
I think the politicization of issues is really about social justice.
Yeah.
So for me, that's always been an important thing, just, you know, with two eyes, just seeing what's going on, particularly in Hawaii, with issues having to do with Hawaiians. Whether it's access, whether it's fair representation in the prison system, whether it's the houseless issue for many Hawaiians. And having been very fortunate to have come from a really wonderfully supportive family, the whole political issues for Hawaiian sovereignty and Hawaiian issues has always been a part of my psyche, plus the friends I hang out with, you know, whether it's Kaleo or Patterson, who I really admire, and my own kumus, Halimakur or Keola Lake. And but I come from a tradition, you know, my grandfather, excuse me, was a very committed man in community. He was a lawyer, so we have a lot of lawyers and judges in our families. So, and my aunt was a confidant of the Queen's, Aima Emma Navahi. So we come from that kind of genealogy where there is a real commitment to social justice issues, and I think it's just been passed down to many of us, because we don't necessarily call it political, but it's really in community, but then everything's political, right? So,
right.
Yeah.
But you do. Well, I guess you express it, or you do a lot of your social justice issues is through artistic venue,
Absolutely.
Because you, as an artist and then as a filmmaker.
Right, and as an educator.
Educator,
Because for me, the arts are a very clear voice, an opportunity to give voice to our youth who oftentimes don't have either A, voice, or B, access to express constructively or positively. So for me, it's really important that the arts and creativity offer a lot of our disenfranchised young ones an opportunity to be heard. Absolutely. And so I've been teaching my whole life. That's been my calling.
Teaching art.
Teaching the arts, teaching about self-empowerment, teaching about culture, so that you have a sense of identity and purpose and place. And we call it awamo kuleana, which is, you know, carry your stick, carry what you're supposed to be. And then you have a kuleana, you have a responsibility not only to yourself, but to your culture, to your community, and to others. So.
How did you come, I know, because you support independence for Hawaii.
Correct.
So how did you come to that connection? Because not everybody sees it that way, or, you know.
Actually, that's really, the notion of independence is to me an inevitable one. When you do all your reading and your research, and then ask the right questions and deeply consider the history, it's sort of an inevitable thing. You just say, well, you know, the Newlands Resolution was not a treaty. That was illegal. The overthrow, very much so. So no annexation. I mean, the truth of history allows people, when you give it enough time to study and contemplate, the logical conclusion is hello bird, is independence. And yet it's almost like buying a house. You know, you have to have a position or a point of moderating or mediating where you say, yeah, ideally it would be great for independence. Now, I don't know if that's really conceivable or possible, but I would say, hey, all we're asking is for you to give our land back, and then we'll negotiate from there. So I don't know necessarily if that would be the best answer, but it's really a negotiating position, I think, because a nation within is also a serious possibility. But I just know that the historical abuses and mistruths have to be corrected. We're still talking about it today, aren't we? I mean, that's So we know it hasn't been resolved, and that's why a lot of us really do care and still want some kind of resolution.
Yeah, because in Hawaii, that's the biggest social injustice.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
Absolutely. And what I appreciate too, in terms of both you and John and what you're trying to do also is we're allies. We're allies in the cause for justice, all of us, helping each other. And I think that to me is a very important thing to acknowledge. So thank you.
Oh,
yeah. No, really. It's a big thing for me because we're not working alone.
Yeah. Do you want to share with us a little bit of the different kinds of work you're doing? I know you said you're finishing a documentary, or to explain.
I would love to just say that I think for myself, for me, in the kinds of work that we all get to do, I think it's really a matter of, for me, finding my passion and having found it in the arts and creativity. I'm able to, whether it's in prison work or in charter schools or gifted programs or up at the university, where there is a need for people to find their voice culturally through the arts, through the visual arts. That's where I'd like to be, and that's where I am very often, whether it's in shelters or just where community really needs to feel that it has a visible concrete voice, i.e. through the arts.
Right. Yeah. No, but then, is that what your documentary's going to be about?
Actually, this documentary is the third, and it's sort of like part of this trilogy. So the first one was on my aunt, Auntie Irmgard, and Aluli. So she was a very famous composer and musician, and I never had made a film before, and this was in '89, so it was kind of a really fun story. And then I just said, Auntie, I really want to do a story on you. And she said, well, but Meleanna, you've never made a film before. And I said, I know that, but I think I have a really good idea, and I'm just going to work with really great people. So I did. I worked with Les Blanc.
How did you connect up with him?
Well, I watch a lot of film, and I said if I was going to shoot, I'd shoot like him. He's a wonderful documentary filmmaker. Right. And he was kind enough to come and shoot and work with us for 3 weeks. We did this beautiful little piece 20 years ago, almost. And then over 20 years, actually. And then the next piece I worked with Halimakua and Keola Lake and these extraordinary kumus, who are my teachers, for protocols on Hawaii Island. So this piece was very important because it's about unification and about forgiveness and healing. So this third piece is then, again, the extension of that culturally and more globally and locally in terms of how do we have conversations about the past, about truth-telling and stuff like that. So that's why the film Kuu Aina Aloha, My Beloved Country, is something that's really important to me. And I've been working on that for about 7 years, so I'm hoping to finish it in the next year or two.
You know, when you mention, how do you, it's about locally and globally. What are you saying? How are you linking it to the global?
Well, I think social justice isn't just between two people. I mean, obviously, it's between peoples, it's between communities and countries, and on an international or in an international arena, it's the broader issues of reform and restitution. All those things that many indigenous in the world are fighting, and we're fighting the same issues. So these are not new stories at all. Right. Yeah.
So you want to show how it's connected to.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the same desires, Eiko. We want for our children to have the capacity to live in the places where they've been born and raised. And I have 2 sons, and they live on the continent at this point, and I'm hoping and dreaming someday that they'll be home. Yeah. But they've chosen to live away because they went to school away, and now they have families, and so it's a little more difficult. But I'm still keeping my fingers crossed. But there's so many interesting ways to participate, I think, as a creative, and I think I would invite anyone to find what it is that they're, again, passionate about, You know, in terms of social justice is a really interesting thing because it's not a big thing. It's the biggest thing. And yet it's a small thing. It's how we treat each other.
Yeah.
So it's both large and small, you know.
So when you work, you know, with the youth, the children, is this how you make the connection?
Absolutely. And I'm wanting to make issues relevant and authentic, and having their lives, you know, connect to things that are meaningful to them.
Yeah.
So I do that through culture, and culture is a great vehicle for that.
Yeah.
For actually self-revelation as well as community, you know, bonding and building ties. Yeah. So, and the arts are just an extraordinary vehicle for that.
Because they can express themselves.
They can express themselves, and they can find out or discover things on their own about history, and then make those connections visually. I mean, just take a look around. This is a political place we're at. You know, this is a wetland that has been designated not a historical, I guess a historical site, but a preservation site. And many people have worked hard for this. So you don't think in this beauty anything could be political, but everything is political today. So I really am grateful to, you know, the Chuck Burrows of the world and all of these volunteers and these civic clubs and people who have come here. You know, my buddy Waimea Williams, she's come here for 15 years to try to make a difference.
Wow.
So I look at the beauty of this place and say it doesn't happen by itself.
Right.
So being political is actually animating and becoming engaged in things, you know.
Yeah, doing what you can do. Right?
Exactly, and making a commitment.
Oh,
Yeah,
right.
making a commitment.
That's good.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In some small way, you know, it doesn't have to be anything, you know, you don't have to go save the world. You could just save a marsh, you know, save a tree, you know, make a difference to your neighbor who's a shut-in or something. So for me, social justice is both large and small, very much so.
Do you think, you know, when you're giving all these examples, I think about, for me, I always think about values, you know. To me, that's what's behind social justice or political issues, right? That's how people, to me, are tied together, right?
Yeah, and it's shared values. And these aren't any different than our own families, because we all were raised with, you know, values of gratitude and thrift and trust and malama and aloha kikahi. So it isn't as if these are new things. These are enduring values for all of us that we share, which is the best. You know, that makes it easy. So it's nothing complicated. But it is difficult when families are disrupted and there's so many things that pull us apart today. That's why coming down here is so important. I'm just able to be present to this beautiful place and to the inspirations of this beloved land that we live in. We're very fortunate to call our home. Yeah,
Totally. It's beautiful.
And it's worth fighting for. It's worth fighting for on all levels. So you were saying for this marsh, Kauai Nui Marsh, people have started to volunteer over the years to clear this certain areas. Absolutely.
To come down here.
And that's why we're able to come down here, because before all of these different groups, whether it's the women's prison, the women come out and they're able to kokua here to build steps, and the Kaneohe Marines. I mean, it's a large community project. The schools are involved, the civic clubs. So you just want to give everybody credit and gratitude for caring about the place, because that's how change happens, right? Through care.
Now we're at the marsh, but we're also at this certain site,
Na Pohaku o Hawaii.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit?
Well, it's a storied place, and Sites of Oahu makes mention of it, and there's a beautiful book out by Barbara Pope and the Hawaii Historical Society. It's one of the most beautiful things, and it tells, it's invoking and bringing back the stories of the marsh for all of us, and it's a beautiful book. And the reason I'm bringing it up is because unless we do projects like this, then so many of the stories and so much of the work that our ancestors in Kupuna did to maintain these places will be gone. So Mapuana's family, the Ohana there, the Silvas, they did a really good job of participating and contributing to the book as well. And it's just called Kailua, and it's just a beautiful thing.
But for this site, you were saying it was about a mo'o, right?
Yeah. So Hawaiian and Mehianu were two mo'o, and I believe, you know, the metaphors that are used in Hawaiian lore are just to keep us mindful of how to care for places. But I was working at Kamakau, a wonderful charter school down in on the bay, and we had no reading materials that were about this area. So the youngsters and I and a wonderful colleague, Miki Mayashiro, we did drawings and came up with a beautiful story. And again, the reason I'm bringing those small examples up is because in order for us to claim or reclaim our stories and things, we have to revision and reanimate our places and invoke the spirits, you know, and the winds, and create our stories anew. So this story about how Wahine, these two mo'o, and Mehianu, has been brought forth again in a different context through the children's eyes, which is so beautiful.
Wow.
Yeah. So I love helping the little ones create and write and draw and bring into being something that wasn't there before, you know.
Yeah.
So.
So how do you select what you work on, or is it just?
Well, actually, another good question. I put it out to the universe. Like there's a wonderful opportunity in Hauula. There's a fabulous program, a KEEP program that's called, and a friend of mine who invited me to help photograph, and there's stories out there in that area. And I said, well, how's about I come teach you guys how to photograph? And I do a workshop on creativity. So that's how I'm able to build a capacity in different places. So they had a wonderful grant, and they made 20 books, stories told by us. So the stories were haku, they were created in community. So those are the kinds of projects I really, really, really love to do.
Yeah.
So social justice in a different way. It doesn't have to have that political edge always, because to me everything's political. So pick an area, any area.
Right.
And education and access is really important to me. So.
But what you're saying, how you select that, is what I say to a lot of like students, because they want to know what they can do. It's almost like, you know, it's like you have your own talents and do what you can do, and then it can fit into something larger.
And then you ask the question, how can I be helpful? See, that's what people are always just kind of shy, and you got to go, hey, how can I offer my help? And then just to be aware enough to say, wow, I can do this part, or I can help in this capacity. And I think that is a way for all of us to be able to just get involved and just actually find things. And it's really about the passion about what we want to do, because there's so many ways to make a difference. So many ways.
What do you think is the most important issue? I mean, we talked about obviously the larger one, but for the smaller types of issues, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you feel is important?
I think restoration of the language. I think Olelo Hawaii is so important, because you really can't have a culture thriving without its language. And you know, our musicians have done such a great job, but we really need the language to flourish. So we really need people to commit to the language and to building a base for future generations. And my buddies Puakea and Kau'i are working on an Ike Ku'oko'a, the Hawaiian language newspapers. So anytime you can do things for community or in community, all you have to do is look around, you know, look left, look right, go find some way to contribute, whether it's you know, a work day in the marshes, or typing in for a newspaper project, for Ike Ku'oko'a, for helping in the charter schools, you know, help them move. I mean, there's so many ways to get involved.
Yeah.
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 You know, and it's not just for Hawaiian issues.
Right.
Obviously, we're talking about issues that affect all communities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I think, yeah, I'm always interested in just how people come to some kind of consciousness, like political consciousness. That's why I'm interviewing different.
Yeah, and you know, this
people,
political consciousness is interesting because it comes from just a desire to be of service and helpful, and just to see that there's so much need in community everywhere.
Yeah.
And you know, for me, when I was 19 and I was overseas studying, I spent 3 months with Buddhist monks. So that rocked my world and opened my whole orientation and appreciation to the world. So
was this in Asia?
It was in France, of all places.
France?
Yeah, I was studying there, and I ended up staying with Buddhist monks, Tibetans, for 3 months. So those kinds of stories are really interesting because they kind of like rock your world and open you up to new things, and you meet people who you just can't believe are doing really fascinating things, and you just kind of go, wow, I want to be like that, I want to do that. So it's more being able to be mentored by experience and extraordinary people.
Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
You know?
So it's sort of like following, not your instincts, but something guiding.
Well, no, and actually it is instinct. It is intuition. And as an artist, I'm always telling the young ones, I'm always saying, follow your na'au, because it'll always lead you to some really interesting places and to fantastic insights. At least it's been like that for me.
Yeah.
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 So,
Me too.
Yeah. And you know, people say, well, you know, a lot of people, they go, well, I don't even know what you do, kind of sometimes. And I think, well, I'm not a big talker in the sense of like a lot of my sisters. I love my family. My family is very political. Everyone is very committed. So I'm just one of the M's. I'm political in my own way, through my art, through my cooking, through the small things, you know, that to me make a difference. But, you know. Anyway.
But it's a collective thing.
It is a collective.
You know.
It's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And as long as you count in the collective, i.e. as long as you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, hey, it's a good thing.
Matters.
Yeah, it does matter.
Yeah.
Everything does matter. It does.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do the kids, when you're teaching them, do they ever ask you, you know, do you take risks or something?
Actually, that's a good question also. I think risks are always part of the conversation. The risk to be truthful, the risk to be honest, the risk to stand up and be counted. I remember taking my son, my 10-year-old, to a rally on Hawaii Island for geothermal. And he was 10 years old, and the police officer said, "Hey, ma'am, you can't get yourself arrested out here because you have a 10-year-old. You can't leave him here." I said, "Okay." So I think too, Eiko, the interesting thing is to be a mother and to be a part of all of that, and to be a part of a large family. It isn't like you can be out there all the time. At least that wasn't my experience, having been a single mother.
Yeah.
I raised 2 children by myself because I was widowed very young.
Oh.
So, you know, you do what you can do, and I think that's a really big lesson for everybody, because everything makes a difference.
Yeah, but do you feel like, you know, it sounds like, you know, you have taken risks, like when you talked about, you're staying in France and then you decide to study with these Buddhist monks. I mean, that's like a risk, or doing something different.
And you know what, for an artist, those aren't risks, those are opportunities. It's just the way that it's a perception of things. Yeah, so what is risky to a lot of people is not risky to me or to an artist, because to me it's an opportunity and an adventure. And the young ones remind me of that when they do all these crazy things. I go, God, you know, that's risky behavior. And they go, no, not really, Kumu. We're just doing what we love to do. So I have to keep reminding myself that I had those attitudes too when I was young. Like, okay, you know, let's go to Kaho'olawe and document. But there's a lot of unexploded ordnance. You want to take that chance? Sure, why not? You know what I mean? So there are risks, but you got to have faith and belief that there's something bigger that's going to be caring and watching out for you. It makes a difference to me too. Yeah. So.
I was thinking, and that comes back to the land.
And it's actually all about the land. And being political in a place like Hawaii is very easy. You know, I mean, you know, when people say, well, you're you are kind of political. I go, well, there's so many issues to be engaged in, right? And I just love my friends, my mentors, whether it's a Marion Kelly or Pokala Lainui and his wife Pua, or you know, Kekuni, all of these people. There's so many incredible people here who love the land.
Yeah.
And who have made a difference, and they've made a difference in my life. So it's like paying forward or giving, you know, giving back in ways that hopefully do make a difference.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah. And my siblings, I'm very proud of them, really, most of all, because they're an amazing bunch of people in terms of being people who give
talented
back.
Sisters.
Yeah, they're a riot, all of them. And my brother, I have a brother, by the way.
I didn't know you had a brother.
I do. He's the youngest. He lives in Oregon, and he does amazing things there. Yeah. So it is a familial, it is a family kuleana that happens, you know, that has been passed on from my dear grandfather and my grandmother, Noah Webster Aluli. Can you imagine a name like that? So, but he was a man who did a lot of center work for Hawaiians. So
what's center work?
Center work, work that makes a difference in community, whether it's taking care of people who are homeless or people in need of certain things. So yeah, he did amazing things in the community, my grandfather.
Wow. And this is on this island? Or
on Oahu, correct. Wow. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, there's just a big old history.
Yeah.
A legacy of that.
Yeah.
Which I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. Is there anything that you want to add that we haven't talked about as we wind down the interview?
Yeah, you know, I'm just hopeful that through the work that we all can do collectively together, that we can move Hawaii forward, because Hawaii has a very special place in the world, I think.
Yeah.
Because of not only the indigenous voice and mindset, but because of all of us here, we all make a difference. And I think I would love to just remind everyone that, because it isn't for others to do, it is for us to pick up our responsibility and to accept whatever it is that we need to do.
Yeah.
So I think that would be my wish and my hope, you know, and my part of my cheerleading about life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just my gratitude to you both today and to this beautiful day. Mahalo kia kua. When I think about our lives, it isn't as if we come into things through a vacuum. Everything in our lives is important up to this point. And when I think about all the mentors and people who believe in us in terms of political and social action, it's for us to honor, to be very perceptive about the valuing of those people and the things that they appreciate, so that we can actually better vision for the future. So it isn't as if these things are lost, you know, when they go, when they die. So I've had many incredible teachers that I could give lots of credit to, who meant a lot to me, who I've learned a lot from.
Yeah.
So.
And you're right. It's like, just like with the ancestors, right?
Yeah.
They're passing something on, and it's our like kuleana
Absolutely.
to keep it going, right?
Absolutely.
Pass it on too.
Yeah. You know, sometimes I wish I was, you know, a more rabid activist type, but that's not my nature. So I think it's really important for folks to know that you don't have to be at the head of the argument. You can be that person in the third or fourth row, because we all need to go forward, you know, and you don't have to be in the front. For example, my buddy David Kalama and I, we did a piece called Onipa'a. And the reason that was so important for me is because it was in '93 when we were commemorating or observing the overthrow. And I didn't even want to be at this thing, because I was actually kind of afraid, you know. I was thinking, wow, this is going to be very, very politicized and could be potentially dangerous. And then I got myself involved, so that I did 150 interviews over 5 days. And what I learned is there's such need in our communities. And when people say to me, well, why do you identify with being a Hawaiian? That's an interesting thing. That's a political statement. Because why I do that is because the Hawaiian, I mean, the Chinese, the German, and the English part of me are doing very well, thank you. And that's how I talk about it, because you know, there's such need in community.
Yeah.
So you can make a difference by just, you know, the smallest of things.
Right.
You know, it doesn't have to be interviewing 150 people over 5 days at a big function. It could just be taking Tutu, who lives down the street, to her medical appointment. And that even is a statement of faith and politic, because you're making a difference in someone's life.
Yeah.
So for me, that's really important. The notion of politic is kind of a strange one, you know, because it's much more than that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And for Journey to Justice, that is kind of what I want to do, is interview different people, and so they can see through, like you're saying, all different kinds of people.
Right.
You can do something, you can be political, and in Hawaii, we all do something because it's somebody we know, right?
No, exactly.
And then if they can hear the interviews and see you guys weren't born that way, but you arrived
absolutely
through experiences, through people.
Absolutely.
Maybe they can do it too. You know,
and I think that's the invitation
Yeah.
to come and pick up whatever it is that you really are passionate about. That mural that I was talking to you about earlier.
Yeah.
It's called Hawaii Kakou, and it's a mural at the convention center.
And is it permanent?
Yes, it's permanent.
Oh.
Yeah, and it's an important recent statement that we made. It has to do with indigenous wisdom.
And it was
done in response to APEC.
And who painted it?
It's 25 artists, 5 professional artists. My buddies Solomon, Al Lagunero, Harinani Orem, Kahi Ching, myself. We had 5 alakai, and then we had 15 young ones that I've been mentoring. So all of these young ones I've been mentoring.
From a certain school?
They were all originally from 1 or 2 schools, and now they're in 8 or 9 different schools.
Oh.
So we've come together and we do a lot of mural work together. And that's a really perfectly wonderful example of doing something concrete.
Yeah.
And the mural is called Hawaii Kakou, and it's bringing new old wisdom forward and just saying, hey, there are other answers, and APEC and what it's doing and has done is not the answer.
Yeah.
But it's also that third voice, or the witness, or being able to say, hey, we've got other things that we'd like you to think about that are important, you know. So that's a really cool project I'd love you to see.
Yeah.
Gotta check it out.
Yeah.
Hawaii Kakou on the ground floor.